Hey everyone, I'm back with another video. I wanted to try out a Skillshare class I found on portrait drawing. The class is called Level Up Your Portrait Drawings by Chris Hong, who is an artist and YouTuber, and I thought she had some really interesting ideas around drawing portraits, and it's something that I've wanted to get better at for a long time. So I watched her lesson on Skillshare, not sponsored, and um, I just wanted to try out things that she talked about in her class. Um, so here is a time lapse of me drawing. The one thing that I really took away from her class is breaking down lights from shadows, and also getting better at seeing the relationship between different features of the face. So she talks about having different landmarks when you're drawing. For instance, like the inner corners of the eyes, or the corners of the nostrils, or like the dark lines of the mouth, or kind of the shadow that your eyebrow makes with your eye, like underneath your eyebrow. So she really talks about drawing those guidelines first and really looking at like if they are in relationship with each other. And then from there, like in terms of shading, really having the shadows, um, really making sure the shadows are like well defined and that you draw them out beforehand, and keeping all the shadows a dark, like near the same range of darkness, and all the lights in the same range of lightness. So having a clear contrast between dark and light. Yeah, it was kind of difficult for me to draw some of the darker parts and like keep everything in proportion with each other. Um, yeah, you might notice later on that the eyes are a little bit asymmetrical, and that the hair is not very good. So I definitely want to get better at that. And also the hands. I'm not very good at drawing hands or shading hands. Uh, but I'm trying. Yeah. I wanted to get better. The reason why I wanted to follow along with Sarah Hong's class in the first place is because I've always wanted to get better at drawing portraits. Um, I've always had a fascination for drawing people, but I think people are some of the hardest things to draw because we're used to looking at other people's faces all the time, and nailing down like someone's feature is and capturing their likeness and their aura is just pretty difficult because like the slightest tweak in the line or the shape of the eye or the shape of the nose can really change like how a person looks. So it's pretty difficult to nail down how someone looks exactly. But that being said, I think there are some general concepts around drawing faces that I could get better at, including seeing the relationship between the features of the face and capturing the lightness and the darkness and the dimension of the face. Um, yeah, I really liked Sarah Hong's class because she really went over a methodology for drawing portraits that kind of like doesn't require you to be good at understanding anatomy or um, understanding all the muscles in the face or everything that goes behind there. I think she has a good like consistent methodology behind like shading consistent shadows and keeping the lights light and observing the relationships between features that kind of dumbs down portrait drawing into a series of easy steps that you can do to improve any image. Um, so instead of seeing a face as a face, you kind of see it as a collection of different dark and light triangles, which makes drawing the face a lot easier, in my opinion. But like I said, it definitely does help to have some knowledge of how faces and shadows and that kind of stuff works. I think some of the challenges that I faced around shading in particular was kind of how small the page was. I mean, granted, I could draw bigger, but I think when you draw smaller, there's less room for error and less like chances to make mistakes as well. So it was almost easier for me to draw smaller because I was not confident enough to draw a face in a large scale and really hone down all the details and the shadows. Um, but like I said, I definitely need to improve on shading. It is not necessarily easy, and if you observe like the pictures of the sketches that I drew compared to a reference, you'll notice that some of the shadows are not consistent. For example, some of the soft shading and like reflective shadows, I don't really nail down. So my shading itself by itself is kind of messy. But I think her methodology is pretty on point in terms of capturing the shadows. Like once you capture the shape of the shadows, you basically have the whole drawing nailed down. Another challenge that I had when drawing this was capturing the hair correctly. People's hair is really complicated, especially if it's like a lighter tone. So there's a lot of difference between the lights and the shadows. It's really hard to nail down like the texture of the hair and also like kind of the loose like baby hairs that are sticking out, and also making it look like a unit. I tried my best, but definitely something I want to work on. But as a whole, I would definitely highly rate her Skillshare class. It helped me a lot, and portrait drawing is something that I want to get better at, so hopefully I will make more of these videos in the future. And one small thing that she brought up in her videos that really helped me was that she detailed how she captures reference images. I think in the past I've used reference images before, but I hadn't really paid attention to like what made a good reference image versus what made a bad reference image. And I think she brought up a good point about like making sure the shadows in the image are clearly defined and that there's a good light source, like a good strong light source indicating where the light is coming from and where the shadows can be drawn from, because it really does help to define the shape. Otherwise, if it's like an evenly lit picture, you're more focused on capturing the face instead of the relationships between the features and the dark parts and the light parts. She also brought up a good point of using Pinterest for finding reference images. I think for a while I had a lot of like taboo around using Pinterest as a good reference. Like I found Pinterest to be really useful. Like I found a lot of like good portrait photography and references on Pinterest. So if you hadn't given it a try, I would definitely recommend it. It could serve as a really good source of inspiration. Yeah, before I would use like Twitter, but it's a little more inconsistent between like finding good references. And I've also kind of like toned back my usage of social media recently, so Pinterest is a really good source for finding reference images. Like I said, I'm by no means an expert at shading, but if you have any tips around drawing faces or any other like references that or tutorials that you think are really good for drawing portraits, please let me know. Yeah, and if you have any recommendations around like shading or any other things, please pass that along because I want to get better at drawing portraits.